Springboks claim back-to-back Rugby Championship victories as the All Blacks round off their campaign with a well-deserved victory over Australia. Welcome back to the Ruck and Roll Show. Well, that's the Rugby Championship all wrapped up for 2025, and what a tournament it was. What's your immediate reaction of that tournament?
The deserved winners came out on top in the end. South Africa were just the most consistent, the most dominant team throughout the tournament. And yeah, big congratulations to them for securing back-to-back tournament victories, because yeah, they really proved why they're the best in the world, I think.
Yeah, I can really see the glee on your face there as you say that. Yeah, I think we were all maybe thinking that it might be a different winner this year, especially with how the first couple of rounds went. But South Africa managed to pull through in the end. But we'll start into them at Twickenham. So they won the Rugby Championship at Twickenham, 29 points to 27 against Argentina. Argentina really coming out fast at the start of that game. What did you sort of make of Argentina's start in that game? Because they came out fast. They seemed to be finding space in the wide channels quite a bit. Carreras was really getting his hands on the ball. Christian Telly as well at 10, the new 10 coming in. What do you make of that fast start?
I think it was the ideal start that they probably wanted. It was just, rack up points as quickly as possible, whether they're coming from tries or whether they're coming from penalties. And, to get 13 points straight off the bat unanswered is probably exactly what they wanted to achieve. And I think, the game plans was working really well. They've done the same thing throughout the tournament of kind of, I've said it before, they don't back themselves so much against these bigger sides to go over the whitewash and claim the tries. But I think what they do back is their kicking game. And, Carreras and Christian Telly, they were both really good.
Really impressive start for him. Coming in, he plays for Racing in the top 14, and him coming in place of Carreras, in place of Albornoz, who was unable to make the matchday squad. How impressive was the way he sort of managed that pressure in the early stages? Yeah,
I think if you talk about soaking a game and playing 10 under pressure, he's absolutely nailed it. He just... from everything, from his distribution, from his kicking, he just was spot on. He didn't seem to be crumbling at all. And I think the reason the scoreline was so close was mainly because of how he dealt with everything going on.
You sort of get the game flowing. Well, it was, as I say, really fast start from from Argentina, and they really got into. And we spoke about physicality in previous weeks and how that was such a key. If Argentina were going to, you had to front up, and it feels like they did for that first 30 minutes, but then it was sort of it felt like the power game was just starting to become a wee bit too much, particularly the set pieces. What do you think was the turning point for in your opinion, in that game, sort of when South Africa found themselves back into it?
I don't think there was a defining moment or a certain moment in the game where it just suddenly switched and the momentum swung. I think it was kind of swinging more and more as the first half went on, and then with that Reinach try just before half time, I think that probably made Argentina's heads drop a little bit going into that second half, and then they score early on again with Malcolm Marx and just being an absolute nuisance, and just
fantastic.
He was soaked on the day, and I think that was probably the moment they were just like, okay, I think we're down and out here. But I think for them, they would have probably been hoping that they could have spoiled it for South Africa and prevented that bonus point try coming in. But as I say, Malcolm Marx again coming to ruin the party and make sure that they win the tournament.
Yeah, no, well, Malcolm Marx was absolutely fantastic. And we speak about Kubus Reinach in that game. He's really been someone that's come in, sort of not out of the wilderness, but he wasn't first choice heading into the Rugby Championship with Grant Williams starting the first couple of games. But he's really come in and he's consolidated that place in the team. It's just sort of interesting to see how he was able to manage the game and keep them flowing, get the most out of his forwards, really get the most out of his pack, which is such a key as a Springboks 9. Well, it sort of seemed like in that end of the first half. I thought that was sort of where it swung down, with that sort of scrum, just absolutely mullering them at the scrum in the last couple of games. It's sort of really last couple of minutes, and it felt like Argentina were really hanging on there. And then when that score went in, I think you're right, the heads probably dropped. But you move into that second half, we speak about players like Malcolm Marks, and stuff. It was even tight in that second half, but it just felt like players like Malcolm Marks they were getting in, they were being a nuisance at the breakdown, and they were getting themselves up the pitch, and then it was that set piece, the line out, that was really getting them the points in this game, and the scrum, getting them the field position. How do you assess Malcolm Marks' performance in this tournament? He started, I believe he started all the games for the Springboks in this championship. How do you assess his performance?
I mean, there was a reason he was in, I know we're not, our word isn't law, but there was a reason he was in all of our, world player, world team of the years kind of.
Well, he was actually my second choice back.
Oh yeah, of course you
I
had
might have to
Sheehan.
revise that based on recent evidence.
Yeah, no, I think he's just a different animal, and he's been, he's a classic example of how a modern day front rower has evolved from how it was, 10 years ago. Because you look at someone like, I don't know, even Mbenambi, who, his counterpart, who is, a very typical, like, short, stocky kind of hooker who just does the odd, just does the basics right of throwing in, hooking the ball, and then that's kind of him out of the game and not doing a lot. But Marks is just everywhere. He's absolutely, leads from the front, carries hard. He's just such a big presence, and that's what you want from a hooker nowadays, rather than, a typical, like, old school Mbenambi kind of player.
Yeah, and looking over to Argentina, you had that moment where they were applying pressure. You had that try from Delgui after a sort of a bit of a horrid pass from Cheslin Colby, as good as he was in the game. Delgui gets them back into it, gets them back to within 9 points. And then you've got that kick just in front of the post from Santi Carreras, who just misses it. And it just seemed to me after that point, does it seem like the real big difference between the Argentinas and the Australias of this world and the South Africas and New Zealands is taking those big moments when they come? Because that's sort of what it felt like to me.
Yeah, I think clinicism has to come into it for sure, because, as I said earlier in this podcast already, but, Argentina don't always... They don't always take the opportunities that are presented with them. Like they were camped in the South Africa 22 for a while, got a penalty, but then just went for post because it was easier. Like, why not push yourself? Why not go to the corner? Why not actually try and get under this?
It was the 9-point deficit, and if they got it to 6, then they could have gone for the try, which they eventually got in injury time. But yeah,
but that's halfway through the second half, if they get that score, then that's momentum that they're building up for themselves, and then can go on and fight and, prevent them from doing anything else. I know that South Africa didn't do anything after that, but they can carry momentum forward with that because, they'd be in the lead then. They create more of a game for themselves.
Yeah, well, it was it seemed like a big kick miss from Carrera. I mean, his accuracy in this tournament has been absolutely outstanding. He's been one of the, like, in terms of backs or in terms of tens, he's been one of the players of the tournament. But it was really, that would have set up a real grandstand finish. But it was not to be, and Argentina were unable to get the better of South Africa. But when you assess both sides' championship here, where do you think they are at, sort of heading into those? I'll read out some of the fixtures both sides have, because it is quite tasty. South Africa, they'll have Japan on the 1st of November coming back to Wembley for another match. They have France, Italy, Ireland, Wales, so that's a really jam-packed schedule. And then Argentina will have Wales, Scotland and England. Just where do you think both sides are at, sort of heading into those sort of Northern Hemisphere fixtures?
I think obviously South Africa will be, it's bread and butter for them kind of thing, isn't it? Like Japan, that's going to be a bit of a walkover. Maybe it'll give them a chance to kind of see what other player depths they've got.
Try some more lineouts in the middle of the pitch.
Yeah, I wouldn't be
that you love so much.
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? But
to be fair, they've cut that out in recent games. To be fair,
They have, because I
Brassy must be
think
listening to the podcast.
I think it was, as I said before, it was moments like that where they were overcomplicating it rather than just doing the basics right, and that's when New Zealand overturned them in that first victory, because they did the basics right. The hands were brilliant, and then New Zealand, South Africa came in that second test and were just like, right, do the basics right, and then we'll go on and win this. And they proved it, because they went and absolutely stormed them. South Africa, when they go to France, I think that will be the biggest test. If France are fully fit, I don't see them standing a chance, honestly.
Oh, wow, really? That's a big shout, that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think France, they've got a Six Nations to defend. They've got, players coming back like Antoine Dupont. He might be back by that point. Probably not as fully fit, but he'll be wanting to get into that squad and show that he's still top dog kind of around. But then there's obviously other games that they'll have, which is a bit like like the Wales
the Ireland
game.
one will be interesting to sort of see where Ireland are at, because there's been a lot of shouts that Ireland are maybe potentially on a decline. So it'll be interesting to see that one.
Yeah, not much to your amusement, I'm sure.
No, well, maybe if they had more Ulster players, and I don't know. Nah, but no, we're not in the best of shapes at the minute.
I think the best matchup that I'll be looking forward to seeing is Scotland versus Argentina, because I feel like those two sides are very evenly matched. Like, you're kind of putting, if you're grouping teams together, you kind of put, New Zealand, South Africa, France, maybe England, maybe Ireland into that conversation. But then you go a couple down and you've got Scotland and Argentina. And I don't think there's many who are like on their kind of level. Like Italy, I don't think are quite up to their standard. But then I don't think either of them are quite at the standard of, beating Ireland consistently. Or, I think seeing where this one will go, it'll really set out how the world rankings will be at the end of this.
Well, I think Argentina are sitting in 5th in the world rankings that you say there. It's quite interesting. In the previous couple of years, they've sort of struggled to beat sides sort of away from home in this Autumn Nations series that has been the last couple of years. Is this the sort of next step? What if you're Felipe Contaponi going into the autumn? What games, like how many games, and what? Well, obviously you want to win every single one, but how many wins do you think you need to get there?
I'm just looking at their fixtures. So they've got England
and Scotland, Wales.
England, Scotland, Wales. I think Wales has to be a must-win. Like, there's no doubt about it. Like, that should be the moment that they're practicing, going, right, how are we going to score tries? How are we going to get over there? How are we going to do this? I think England will obviously be a bit of a tougher test, because there's just so much quality there, and it's self-explanatory. I don't need to say too much more about how big a game against England is, but equally, Argentina are a team who can show up on the day and absolutely just cause an upset. And they showed that in the Rugby Championship this time round. Scotland as well, I think, has to be a bit of a must-win, but as well, these are all away games for Argentina, so the pressure will be on. But I think it'll be build momentum and do better each game kind of thing, rather than looking for results. I think beat Wales 100%, go score tries continuously then against Scotland and England. And then just try and hope for better results.
Yeah. Well, do you think they can cause an upset against England, or do you think it'll just sort of be? I think you're right. I think the Wales one, they'll go in as favourites, and they'll probably expect to win given what their performances in the Rugby Championship. But do you think the Scotland game they can get a result there?
I do think they genuinely could get a result there, but because they've been playing together, for the past. Well, they've been training together since June, July. So to carry that, to be carrying that on, whereas Scotland haven't been together since. God, I wouldn't even like to guess it, but it's been
it's
far
been
longer than
since June, really, that they've sort of packed down and stopped playing.
But even then, that was missing key players like Finn Russell, Duhan van der Merwe, all those Lions players. Yeah,
9 or 10, I think it was as well. That's a very interesting point you raise there. This is always what sort of the debate happens when the Northern Hemisphere is sort of the equalizer, because obviously Southern Hemisphere sides are coming over to visit the Northern Hemisphere sides, and obviously going away from home is harder than playing at home. That's self-explanatory, but you also have that of a rugby championship and playing regular international rugby, so that's sort of where the Southern Hemisphere sides get their sort of advantage. But I would say, Dom, really, I think that's when you say about France and South Africa, just as we finish on this, and that's probably one of the biggest games of the autumn, I would say France, because their league starts so much sooner. I think it's like something like 3 weeks before the URC in the English Premiership, or 2 or 3 weeks. I think because they have so much more domestic rugby, and a lot of their players are back earlier and sort of playing rugby regularly, even if it's not international standard, I think that leaves them in a better circumstance, and I think they could potentially beat the. I think you could be right. I think it'll be tighter. I don't think it'll be a walkthrough, but I think it could potentially be quite tight. Will you be making it to any England games yourself this autumn, or?
I don't know if we're going to any England games. I am lined up to go to the Wales-Japan game, though.
Oh, we are? Okay, right. Well, I might see you there, because I think I was thinking of going to that one as well. I was going to go to the Argentina, and it's half price for students, you see. So, sorry, that's not me trying to plug, and well, it wouldn't matter anyway, but it's not me trying to plug Wales, but yeah, well, I'll probably be there. But yeah, that'll be very interesting to see how Argentina and South Africa do, and there's two teams at very different stages and with probably different expectations, but it'll be interesting to see nonetheless. So that brings us into what was the first game of the weekend, but to what turned out to be the less significant game, which is sort of harsh to say when it's a Bledisloe Cup, but New Zealand beating Australia 28-14 in Perth at the Optus Stadium. What did you make of this one? I thought it was quite, personally myself, I thought Australia showed some real good signs, especially in that first half in terms of controlling the game, controlling territory, but then they were just really sloppy in that second half, and in New Zealand, it was probably a lot more of a professional performance from them, really, rather than sort of the swashbuckling rugby that we're used to seeing from them when they play at home. What do you make of it?
Yeah, I think New Zealand were just excellent on the day. I think, it wasn't anything outstanding that they were doing, but they just did everything well, and they did everything right. I think I just want to touch on Tupaia. I think New Zealand have now found their outside centre. He was outstanding, and the last couple of games he'd been brilliant when he'd come off the bench, and I was glad he got a start because 2 tries in 5 minutes, whatever it was, but is outstanding. But yeah, when you got him and Barrett in the centres, I think that's a really dangerous combination.
Yeah, he was absolutely fantastic in this game. I remember the text come through. Oh, Tupaia is so good, and I was like,
He's
yeah,
so good.
I could see. But yeah, no, in this, I think you're absolutely right. It was a clinical performance. It was a really strong performance from the off. They did have certain moments where Australia put them under pressure, especially at breakdown in that first half. Sort of Harry Wilson and Will Skilton even at the start of the game before he went off. That was a big loss for them, losing him for NHIA. But yeah, they were really, really solid in that first half. Australia, I thought it was quite a tight game, and then obviously you have that Geordie Barrett grubber through, and they get over with Quinn Tupaia with great footballing skills, and it was taking those. It was in the 22, and it was when in Brokenfield where they just took those opportunities, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as I say, it was just, and we come back to the point that we were talking about earlier about Argentina and that their lack of clinicism. For New Zealand, it was taking those opportunities when it was handed to them and optimising the points that they get from them. I do think Damien McKenzie has a bit of a way to go in that 10 position before he's kind of at the level of Barrett, but yeah, it's just, you can't. It's difficult when you've got a player like him because he's so good, and he's so he's not a veteran, but he's so experienced in the international game that I think so many people expect so much from him. But it's also difficult to kind of live up to those expectations sometimes. Like to only get like one conversion. Especially when one of them was pretty much under the posts. It's not the best, but his kicking game in open play I didn't think was the best either. But
yeah, well, they seemed to manage it anyway. Really, I think it was a lot of sort of like a backline effort. As we said, Cam Roygaard was fantastic last week. He was again very solid this week, and they just I think it was a lot in that second half in particular. It was very much Australia were just not taking their opportunities. They're not well. New Zealand weren't allowing them sort of momentum in the game. They disrupted it at the breakdown. Seems like Australia were making a lot of like sort of dangerous sort of clear outs, a lot of croc rolls and stuff like that. Seemed to lose control of the breakdown, perhaps getting a bit frustrated as well. It just doesn't seem like they're taking those opportunities, even when Ikatau scored and sort of cut that lead down to 6 points. But then it was just great game management really from New Zealand. They got that penalty from great chip and chase from Will Jordan, and that was it really. Well, I'll have to touch on James Slipper though. On the Australia side, 151 matches for Australia and out in Perth. His final game, the third most capped player in international rugby history. He's probably, I'm not sure if he's obviously a prop, like, and he's not probably my sort of the player I would naturally gravitate towards. But what can be said about James Slipper and his service to his country?
I think a very loyal servant for one, and 151 times is absolutely mental.
As a prop as well.
That's
the scrum.
The amount of scrums he must have contested in, but to have such longevity and also such consistency, because if you look at like an England team or something, you never really have someone who's like George Ford, for example, he's got over 100 caps for England, but he hasn't always consistently been in the squad. There's been times where he's been dropped out, there's been times where he's had a resurgence and come back in, but to consistently play like 151 games is absolutely mental. And like you say, for a prop, for such a tasking position as well, like the strain that you go under as a prop is ridiculous. So massive credit to him, and congratulations, enjoy your international retirement.
Yeah, no, it's been absolutely fantastic for Australia. But again, we move it over to look at the sort of the legacy, I guess, for both these sides, moving out of the Rugby Championship into the Autumn Nations Series. Australia don't have much of a break. They've got a couple of weeks off, and then the 25th of October they'll be travelling to Japan, which will be a tough test for them. Probably two sides. Well, I'd say Australia would be favourites still, but two sides that are not miles away. And then they travel to England and Italy, Ireland, and then finish off at France. And then for New Zealand, it's to Soldier Field in Chicago to play Ireland, a repeat of that 2016 fixture. Irish will be hoping for a bit of the same sort of result in that game. And it's Scotland, England, Wales, so just those sort of four British and Irish Lions nations. What do you sort of make of both sides, and how do you think they are looking heading into this Autumn Nations Series?
Australia will be on a massive high, and if they're able to get fully fit squads, allow whichever boards allow players to go and play, then I think England will be under serious strain in that opening fixture. I could see Australia nicking that one. I think it'll be high scoring, kind of similar to the last time that they were at Twickenham. But I think England need to be worried about that fixture and start off well, and kind of, as I say, for other against other teams, build on the performances, because they've had such a successful Lions tour. As much as the result didn't go in their favour, they've had a very successful Rugby Championship, considering everybody was kind of writing them off at the start. So I think they'll be feeling pretty good going into it.
When you take it in, it was sort of ended with a bit of a bit of a downer, I suppose, with losing both games of the Bledisloe Cup. But when you bring it in with the comparison to the expectations and sort of where Australia have been at in previous years, 2 wins out of 4, or 2 wins out of 6 rather, it's not horrendous. In a lot of those games, they probably at stages they looked like they could have potentially won as well, and away victory to South Africa. I guess my question is with Australia, because it's hard to know where they're at. I think they're obviously below New Zealand and South Africa, and I think everybody sort of knew that heading into the Rugby Championship. But how many, when you look at those fixtures, Japan, Italy, and then sort of some of the bigger teams, England, Ireland, France, how many wins do you think they'll be looking like realistically getting when they travel for these games?
I think maybe 3 out of 4. I think if they could get 75%, they'd
3 out of 5 or 3. Yeah,
because
including the Japan one. So it's Japan, England, Italy, Ireland, and France.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry, the website I'm looking at doesn't include the Japan one, but I'd say 4 out of 5 then in that case, because they should beat Japan. I reckon they'll cause an upset somewhere. I think they'll probably beat England, given it at this stage, because I think it's the Lions that are really going to impact it, because not all of them have come. I think it's only Ollie Chesham who's come back from an English standpoint, who's been allowed back to play, and he'll definitely be in the fold in the England squad. So to say that none of them have really come back yet, and we're under a month away from that opening game against Australia, it's definitely going to be. I don't know. I'd be a little bit worried as just for the lack of game time, as much as they have been training. But it all matters on the pitch. But then I think when they play Italy, I think they should win. Ireland, I think they could win, but also being in Dublin, it'll be, it won't be an easy fixture by any stretch. I think.
Well, Ireland will have a similar problem, won't they, in terms of they've got, what is it, was it 15 or something like that?
13, 14,
13 or 14 Leinster players are just coming back into training now, and then you'll have players like Tag Byrne and the like of that who are away as well, and Bundyaki. I think that's another one that they would highlight. Yeah,
I think for Australia, they're definitely going to pin that one. They know how they played because they've played the majority of them over the summer. But it's it's also in a bit of it might be in a slightly different game plan. So there's a lot that obviously goes into rugby, and there's a lot that could happen or might not happen. So it's so difficult to call, and until we see these opening fixtures, like for Ireland, that. No offense to you, I don't think that's going to be a win against New Zealand, because the games that they've played so recently and the lack of games that Ireland have played so recently, you just can't really see.
Yeah, that was the problem last year when they played them. I think it was the exact same time. So for New Zealand, do you think New Zealand are targeting all 4 as victories?
Yeah, I think they absolutely have to. I think the only one that they'll maybe struggle with is the England game, because by that point England will have. They'll have played together a bit more. There'll be a bit more cohesion, or there'll be a re-established cohesion rather. I think it'll be the one that England fans and England players will want to win out of all of them. If they lose to Australia, Fiji got to win, and then New Zealand is like absolute must win before they welcome Argentina in those final weekends. But yeah, I think. But if you're looking from a New Zealand perspective, yes, I think they're all must wins, with just England as the big target.
I'm fascinated to hear also, just as we finish off on these two teams' prospects heading into the autumn, Australia travelling to France. Now, I know you said France, they'll beat South Africa. Do you think Australia can do anything when they travel to France, or is that a bit of a reach, bit too far for them at this stage?
Again, it's that final games. Anything could happen. I feel like it'll be a lot more. I'd say a lot more of a level playing field, because they've both had 3 other weekends to have kind of gelled together again and play how they want to play. I think when you look at it. Also on that front, weekend 4, France are at home. They'll have gelled a lot more. So I think the result will go into France's favour more than it will go into Australia's favour. Not to say that they can't cause an upset, because I think it is possible. They did it against South Africa, so why can't they do it against France at the Stade de France?
Well, it'll be a very fascinating one to watch. They're all fascinating games, to be fair, because we're sort of heading into, what is it, a year out from the, or not a year out, rather, what am I on about? 2 years out from the Rugby World Cup in Australia. So it'll be quite fascinating to see where each side sort of is heading forward. And a lot of sort of close and a lot of fascinating matchups. But we'll move into our third segment of the show, which is going to be our combined 15 of the Rugby Championship. So this is basically me and Dom. We're going to pick each of our best 15s, basically from Australia, Argentina, South Africa, and New Zealand. Dom, would you like me to go first, or do you want
You can do the honours.
You need a wee bit more thinking time, do you? Maybe
I might need a bit more thinking time.
Yeah, it is a tough one. It took me a while as well. I sort of had to iron out a few creases from it. But I'll start into it. It feels like a bit of a cop out, but I'm going to start with the front row, and it's going to be an all South African front row because I just think, I mean, the most dominant scrum in the championship. And each of the players here have been very good. Oxen Shea, they said Malcolm Marks, who's probably, I'd venture to say, potentially the player of the tournament as well. Malcolm Marks, and then Wilco Low I've gone in as tight head prop. Second row I've gone for Tupu Vai of New Zealand, and Ruan Norhi, who also played a wee bit in the back row during this championship. I just think he's made a real big difference. He's breathed a bit of new life into that pack as well, I think, for the Springboks, with a couple of older players there. You'll like this. I've gone for Pablo Matera at 6. I just think his sort of physicality he's brought to games, particularly in that second game against New Zealand when they got the victory. I thought he was superb, and he's really brought a lot of physicality for them. Artie Save, I've gone for 7, just real solid. I mean, just every single game, it's just consistency. It's just consistently getting in at the breakdown, big moments like in the later stages of that first South Africa game at Eden Park. He's been fantastic. Harry Wilson, I've gone for 8, and he's had sort of a couple of sort of. So he has made some mistakes, but I think the sort of the physicality and the leadership that he's brought to Australia, they miss him like so much when he's not there. He just brings so much to their game, so I've put him in at number 8. Another probably one of the players of the championship in terms of impact, I've gone for Cobus Reinach at scrum half, and at 10 I've gone for Santi Carreras. Now I was sort of thinking, I was looking at all the options here, and it was just Carreras. He just stood out to me. I think it was the kicking accuracy that he's had off the tee, and sort of how the impact he's had on his sort of backline and his team compared to the other guys. I suppose Sasha, you could maybe say Sasha Feinberg and Gumazulu was an option. I think he's only played probably about half of the games. That was sort of came into the reckoning for that. My centre partnership is all Australian, actually. Which might raise a few eyebrows, but I just think they've been really, really solid. It's Len Ikitau at 12. He's been one of the players of the tournament. He has been absolutely fantastic. He gives Australia so much impetus. Joseph Swalihi as well has really started to sort of spread his proverbial wings. He's been fantastic, and I'm looking forward to seeing them two strike it off in the autumn as well. And then my right winger is Cheslin Colby. Just solid. Just not much needs to be said there. I've gone for Ethan Hooker at left wing there, which is a bit of a surprising one. But I sort of looked at all the players that were used as left wing in the tournament, and I thought, well, there's not really as many standouts really than there is compared to right wingers. And I just think Ethan Hooker's come in and he's played solid, and just sort of the 3 remaining games for South Africa, which has then won them the tournament. So that's what I've gone for there. And then Will Jordan at fullback. I think he's been quite good again. Just really solid, scoring a couple of tries. Marshall in the backfield very well. What is your 15, Dom? And do you have any? Do you have any really strong thoughts about mine?
No, I don't think I can really disagree with any of your choices. I think you've justified them all very well. I think you justified them all very well, and I've got a lot of similarities with mine. So, you'll be unsurprising to hear. But for me, I've also gone for a South African front row of Oxen Shea, Malcolm Marks, and Thomas du Toit. I think the 3 of them are just ridiculous. And word on Thomas du Toit, what a year he's had to win the treble. and then to also win this is just outstanding. So yeah, I think he's definitely up there for loose, tight head, best tight head in the world at the moment. For second rows, I've gone slightly different. I've gone Frost and I've gone Norky.
Okay.
Because I think Frost he's been so consistent in that Australia team, and he's been there week in, week out, with or without Skelton. He's just always been a commanding factor, and just a bit of a nuisance. You could put other people in there, like I thought maybe Scott Barrett, I thought maybe Pedro Rubiolo for Argentina, but I just thought with a bit more consistency and how he improved from the Lions tour, I thought he just nicks it for me. I've got a back row of Pablo Matera, Peter Steph-Toy, and Ardi Savea. I think Matera without Matera, Argentina are just a step down, different kind of team. So I think they do struggle without him. Peter Steph-Toy and I think Ardi Savea are both self-explanatory. Like Peter Steph-Toy, he just doesn't have a bad game, I don't think. He's chipped in with tries. I think he got 2 last weekend, the weekend before, didn't he? So yeah, he's just been just solid, and Ardi Savea is just a nuisance and been massive at massive moments for New Zealand. So I think you can't leave him out. At 9, I've gone in the same and the halfback partnership. I've gone Reinach and Carreras and Ngomazulu. Had he been playing a bit more, I think, like you say, he'd have probably been in there. But yeah, I think if you're looking at a bit more consistency, and again, it's similar to Matera. Without Carreras, they were a little bit lost without him. Without Argentina were a little bit lost without him. So that's why he gets in for me. Centre partnerships. Now this one I think is probably the toughest, because I think honourable mention has to go to Chocobaras for.
He has been good. Yeah,
he's been so good. But then when you also look who he's up against, you've got Ikitau, you've got Barrett, you've got De Allende, and like all 4 of them are just. If you got the pick of 4, for your team, you'd be spoiled. It's such a sport for choice. But I am going to go for Bodie Barrett in my 12. Geordie Barrett. Sorry.
Okay,
sorry.
You're okay.
I think he's just one of those players who, if you put him in your team, you will just know he'll have an 8 out of 10 plus game. Like, he very, very rarely has a bad game. Kicking wise, it's so it's very valuable to have a 12 that has a good boot. Ikitau, he's got that more. He's that more kind of forward running inside centre, and more positive yards. But I think creative wise, Geordie Barrett's he's just incredible, and one of the best in the world for a reason.
That's fair. I mean, they're your sportful choice there.
Yeah, so I think it's personal preference on that one. And then for my outside centre, I'm going to go for Joseph Suoli. Again, I think if you're comparing how he played in the Lions tour compared to this, it was a massive improvement. Like, he was kind of halted a bit in the Lions. You didn't see too much of him, but he really made himself a nuisance in the Rugby Championship. So that's why he gets my pick. And then my back 3, I'm going to go with Max Jorgensen. I'm going to go with Delgi, and I'm going to go with Will Jordan.
Interesting.
Because Jorgensen, because I think, again, a consistent player. I know what you were saying about the left wings. Like, it was a difficult one.
I sort of hadn't. Yeah, I thought him more as a right winger, as a fullback in this tournament. But I suppose when he could transfer over really anywhere, couldn't he?
Yeah. I think. I mean,
Delgi's an interesting one. Because I think you're right. He has come in. He's been like very like he scored a couple of tries, especially he's
Mhm.
sort of come in at a later stage, really. But yeah, he's been
Yeah, I think
interesting.
he's one of the. Yeah, he's very good at getting the ball, kind of cutting inside and keeping the ball alive, and still making positive yards. Rather than kind of getting the ball just about staying in touch and then just going down. So I think his positivity going forward is a driving factor for why he's in my squad. But I mean, Harry Potter, he's had a very good tournament. Cheslin Colby, I'm gonna put his omission in my team due to his 2 mistakes that led to tries. So
So yeah, it's a fair point, to be fair, as wicked tries as they were, as wicked bounces that we were. So
yeah, and yeah, Will Jordan, I think he's, as like for you, pretty self-explanatory.
I mean, that's a pretty solid team, to be fair. I'm looking back at my tight head prop and I'm thinking maybe it was Thomas Totoy, to be fair. It's just they just sort of all complement. The thing is with South African props is they all just come in and they all just do just an unbelievable job at the scrum. So it's just like, take your pick there. But no, that is a very good team. Also, Peter Steph Totoy, that might have been an omission for me as well, to be honest. I think looking back on that, as good as Harry Wilson's been, but yeah, well, I will stick with that one. But that was a very good team, to be in all fairness. But that was our roundup of the Rugby Championship. Been an absolute pleasure to cover the tournament. Obviously, as Northern Hemisphere rugby fans, it's been nice to sort of watch, I guess, probably a different style of rugby and a different teams in more depth recently. But it's been an absolute fantastic tournament. Congratulations to the Springboks. But moving back to the Northern Hemisphere, we have got the roundup of our leagues here. We've got our URC roundup. So this round of the URC, second round, 2 postponed games this week in Scarlets and Connaughts in Galway, and Edinburgh versus Ulster at the Hive Stadium. But we had a couple of interesting results all the same. Apologies. But we've got Leinster, who lost again in South Africa, 39 points to 31 against the Bulls. They are now 0 from 2. So last year's URC champions, I'm absolutely not happy about that whatsoever. No, I'm joking. So they, to be fair to them, they've had a tough start. So they're 0 from 2. Zebra, who are one of the bottom teams of last year, they are 2 from 2. They've beat the Lions and they beat Edinburgh, both teams at home. But absolutely, what a start for them. Their Italian rivals, Benetton, beat a very strong Glasgow side with a last gasp drop goal from Rhino Smith. Cardiff run Monster, very close in Limerick, playing some fantastic rugby there. Me and Luke were in Newport to watch the Dragons and the Sharks play out a very wet and windy draw at Rodney Parade. So that was a very interesting game. I have to say, Dom, just before we move into this one, the end of that game was the most frustrating end to a game I've ever seen. The Sharks absolutely butchered an opportunity in their 22. Then the Dragons go up the other end of the pitch. They have about, it must have been 20-25 phases on the Sharks line, and they have Tina Stabir in the boot to take the drop goal to win the game. They just refuse it every single time, and they go for this big, massive looking pass wide, and the ball just doesn't, they just don't get over and finishes 17-all. So absolutely infuriating, to be honest. But it was a great atmosphere all the same at Rodney Parade. What do you sort of make of the results this weekend, and sort of Leinster's sort of faltering start is probably the biggest news point there, I would say.
Yeah, I think obviously we've discussed already about how Leinster and Ireland, one and the same, whatever, are missing such key players in the minute. With all their players that went off with the Lions, it's difficult to kind of adapt without that. But this result was a lot better than it was than it was last week when they played. Do you remind me?
They played the Stormers 35-0.
Yes, that was it. Yeah, I knew it was a bit of a battering, but yeah, it was a far better performance for sure. At least they've got a try bonus point to kind of carry them over.
Your Sam Prendergast hate watch would have gone quite well this week if there was a wee mistake on one of the tries there.
It was there. No, yeah, I didn't watch the game personally, but
I shouldn't have told you that then. No, I'll never hear the end of it.
I'm gonna go watch it back and just laugh that. But no, it was they're obviously in a bit of a rut, but I'm sure they'll come out of it when all the all the Ireland lots come back. Yeah, it's just close games really. Those ones on the Saturday with 2 points with the Benetton Glasgow, 3 points with Munster and in Cardiff. Obviously the draw. Stormers obviously they are a better team than Ospreys, so it's tough to.
They're always up against it, Ospreys, but I think they've showed a good account of themselves in both games. To be fair, it's always hard to travel to Pretoria and then travel to Stormers in Cape Town as well. So yeah, I think you're right. It's very, very competitive. Like, it seems very competitive. Maybe that's just because all the internationals are away and the teams are maybe sort of a wee bit more similar. But it's been good to see the Italian team start very well as well. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that transpires. But we'll move in to the English Premiership, where we had a number of, as always with the English Premiership, it was just absolutely fantastic rugby, great to watch as always. Probably the game of the weekend was Saints versus Gloucester, where Fly Half Billow kicked to win Saints the game. Their first victory of the season after that sort of conceding that big comeback against Exeter last week. We had a Feo Obusu hat-trick against the Newcastle Red Bulls, and Liam Williams' first game for them. Exeter were absolutely fantastic in that game. Saris thumped Bristol at home, 50 points to 17. Wow, that was pretty insane to watch. Louis Zamet's still looking pretty good all the same. The Tigers came back, huge comeback from, I believe it was 19 points down against Harlequins. And then Bath beat fellow Prem hopefuls Sale at the Rec, with George Ford dropping one of his signature drop goals from the halfway line in the windy and wet weather. Just standard George Ford things. He just pulls it out from anywhere really. But yeah, I think it was quite funny actually. Just before we move into these games, I think a commentator had actually said, "Oh, George Ford. There's something about George Ford and the drop goal," and then he kicks it downfield to George Ford. What does he do? He drops a goal. I mean, he just puts it through the upright. What do you make of this weekend's or last weekend's fixtures?
I think obviously Bath are just absolutely cooking still. They are the team to beat. They're gonna win this Premiership once again. I think Sale it's tough for Sale because they are such a good side. They are 100% a top 4 team, but going forwards they've just got absolutely nothing. I don't know why. They're not missing loads of players from Lions. It's forwards, if anything, that they're missing. But there's just nothing going forwards. Like it just all seems to break down. Like the amount of 21 entries into the 21 they'll have, and then it just kind of peters out, and it's like where does it go, kind of thing. And it's disappointing to see, but yeah, I think hopefully they'll come out of this attacking rut that they're in. Exeter well and truly back. It's so good to see a good Exeter team returning once again. Yes, it's against Newcastle, who aren't. Everybody knows that they're in transition. They're not at the standard that everybody expects of them to be yet, but they are still
Exeter
playing.
Are probably from an outsider looking in, I think Exeter, when you look at how they've played the first 2 games, really good attacking rugby, and you consider Tom Hooper and Lennox Atai coming in from Australia, like that's going to be. Where do you think their ambitions are this season?
Well, I think I'm going to plug my TikTok. In my TikTok, I predicted them to finish. I think I said, I want to say 8th, but I'm regretting it now already because they are playing such attractive rugby. I do think it will change ever so slightly when all the Lions players have come back into their squads and then they're full strength. But equally, like you say, they've got Lenny Cattell, they've got O'Connor to come back. So they could be.
Hooper.
They'll be Hooper. Sorry, I don't know why I said O'Connor. I always get those two mixed up. Even though they're different positions. Anyway, I think when other teams are bringing back to full strength, I think it will be a little bit more difficult. I don't think they'll get playoffs just because of the quality around the Prem that there is. Saris are playing unbelievably at the minute. Bath are obviously top dogs. Sale will just eke out results. I still think Bristol will have a good season, although these injuries have hit them hard, as we've seen in the Saris game. But yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see that Exeter back to a better way rather than the rut that they were stuck in last season. Tigers just clinical again. Harlequins are going to really struggle this season. I don't think they're not going to do very well, unfortunately. But I think it's just squad depth for them that it just kind of comes to bite them.
It does seem like they've got a lot of the same players, and they're struggling to sort of rejuvenate themselves after getting the semi-finals a couple of years of the Champions Cup.
Yeah, and when you do hardly any business over the summer, I mean, what kind of you didn't get playoffs. What kind of improvement are you expecting, especially when everybody around you is making such big signings and bringing in some good business? Yeah, it was a bit of a weird one. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there, but no, a very competent performance from Tigers in that second half, although the first half was pretty diabolical. And then
the Tigers, it's an interesting one. I think it's probably the most fascinating one out of the lot because they've lost so much experience. Like, how many hundreds of caps have they lost of internationals? Andre Pollard, Dan Cole, Ben Youngs, all these players. Where do you think they're? Are they playoff aspirations, or is it more let's just get European Champions Cup rugby for next season and maybe try and cut?
Yeah, I think, as you say, with all the big players that they've lost coming into this season, with Ben Youngs, Mike Brown, Dan Cole, Montoya leaving, and
Andre Pollard.
And Andre Pollard, they're big players that a team is going to miss, and all in quite key positions as well. So I don't think they'll be mid-table this season. I think they'll still do better than other clubs because they've got a foundation. But I think it's definitely positive for, considering Michael Checker also departed at the end of the season. So it's all big changes. But I think Leicester are just they're the type of team that they've been around the block for so long that, they've been so consistent for so long that I don't think they've really got it in them to kind of drop off too much.
I don't think I've ever seen, just when you go through that list of names, including the coach, I don't think I've ever seen such a mass exodus of experience from a rugby club before ever. But yeah, I think you're right. I think they've got the systems in place. Still got a lot of quality players as well. You think Ollie Chesham, Jack Van Portfleet, Helen Monikata as well. I think they should be. Bath will have Carreras coming back in. They're looking strong. They'll have Finn Russell coming back in as well.
Yeah,
Henry Allen's looking well. Ollie Lawrence is back. It's so good to see him back, isn't it? After that long layoff.
Yeah.
Where do you think they're at? Do you think they'll win the Prem again this season? Do you think they're favourites?
I can't see them not. I can't see them not winning it again. With all that quality that they've got, they hardly let go of any players at the end of the season. So and they've also got Thomas Toy coming in as well. So when you've got Benno Urbano and Thomas Toy in the front row, it's a scary prospect. It seriously is.
No, it is, and that I think with that back line there, so with Arundel, and then they've got Crest coming at fullback, and then it's just quality on quality, isn't it? They've got a couple of new players coming in as well. Kepu Tuipulotu, who's been doing very well for the Uni of Bath in recent years, so I think he could come in and be a real great player for them as well. Tom Carr-Smith, and there's just so much young talent coming through as well. But it'll be interesting to see how each of these sides does. We'll have a couple of big games this weekend. Actually, we've got you've got Sale versus Newcastle, Battle of the North, Bristol v Exeter. It'll be so interesting to see those two teams with the amount of changes they've had made come in. Northampton versus Leicester, the East Midlands derby there. That'll be fascinating to watch. Bath v Gloucester, the West Country derby. Harlequins v Saracens, the London derby, and then Gloucester. That's next week. I'm reading too far ahead, but it'll be an interesting weekend of rugby, and we look forward to seeing it. But we're going to bring in a wee new segment on the show just because it is the English Championship, and our Dom Leach happens to be quite a big expert on English Championship rugby, having worked for Doncaster Knights last season. It's part of their marketing team. And does a lot of English Championship coverage on his TikTok channel, as we've alluded to. We'll keep plugging that one. So Dom, I guess the there's a lot of big fixtures this weekend. You'll have Doncaster Knights starting their sort of season off against Cambridge. You have Worcester Warriors coming back, their return to rugby against Hartpury, and then Ealing starting their championship defence against Chinnor at home. What do you think is going to happen in the championship this season? Do you think it'll be sort of Ealing sort of running away with it a little bit again, or do you think there's more contenders in here, perhaps the Doncaster themselves?
A week of fixtures. It started off this weekend. Doncaster were turned over by Nottingham. We also had Worcester narrowly, I say narrowly, it was a 10-point gap, but they scored 10 points in the last 3 minutes to beat Coventry at the Six Ways. So it was a very fiercely competitive game, that one. Hartpury got a slender lead against Cornish, a slender victory against Cornish Pirates. Hartpury scoring 22 points in the first half and Cornish scoring 21 points in the second half. So, both sides were nils in each of the halves as well. So it was very fiercely battled. Caldy got up and running at home against quite a weak London Scottish side. I think they'll really struggle this year. Ampthill got off to a flying start against Cambridge with their new coach, Dave Ward. Also, because he's married to one of the Red Roses. Can't remember which one now, but yeah, it's just slipped my mind. Go on, you're going to say
Abbey Wars, and it's
makes sense.
The English lock, the Red Roses lock. Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a good rugby family, that.
Yeah, and then Richmond back into the championship this season. They beat Chinnor by 5 points in a very blustery weekend with Storm Amy, and Ealing absolutely trounced quite a poor Bedford Blues side, 50 points to 22. So it was kind of some expected results in there, but some shocks as well. Like Doncaster only putting 8 points on Nottingham is pretty poor, considering they were on a 10-game win streak following from last season. So to not even really do any damage to them was quite poor. But they're under a new coach as well, so there's going to be some transition to come from there. Worcester settling back into the league quite nicely. Ealing still just the team to beat, I think. They've got so much quality, they've got so much money, and when you've got such a gap in difference between sides, it does leave it a little bit unfair.
Yeah, well, Ealing have always been sort of the one at the. How many of the past seasons have they won?
They've won 3 of the last 4 championship seasons.
Yeah. Well, it's been absolute domination from them. Yeah, it's an interesting one with the championships. Oh, so we release it to the English Premiership, where we haven't had promotion in the last couple of years because it's been Ealing that have been the side to win and obviously the winner of the championship goes up to the Premiership. And then Doncaster. So could you explain to sort of the people? I know you've explained to me in the past. Why is this? Why can Ealing not go up to the Premiership in the current state of the club?
So, in order for a team to go up to the Premiership, they've got to be able to prove that they can hold or capacitate their ground for 5,000 fans, and then with the progress and planning permission later on within 4 seasons to hold 10,000 fans. So, obviously, all Premiership clubs fit that narrative now, but it's just for Ealing. They averaged, I think, about 1,200 fans last season per game. So they don't get many spectators because they're in an area where Richmond is a big rugby area. Saracens obviously play in London. Harlequins play in London. So there's a lot of competition, in and amongst the plethora of football fans that are in London as well, and teams there. So for them, it's very difficult to attract fans. But they've got a great investor who pumps a lot of money into it. Their wage bill for players, they've got a probably 50-strong team, and they spend about 4 million across the board for them, compared to some clubs the rest of the clubs aren't even touching 1 million in their wage bills. So the gap is just absolutely massive. But the planning permission that is needed and everything else, like if they go up, the promise of them getting the funding that they want or deserve isn't guaranteed. So are they going to put the money into expand their stadium and everything if if they're not going to be rewarded, are they just going to, come straight back down and then have financial struggles? So that's the reason that they're kind of refusing to go up. They do the audits, and they miss out every time because they don't have the correct, don't have the correct plans in place to be able to expand their stadium. The only way they can get around it is if they moved ground. But obviously, we know what happened the last time a London club moved out of London with London Wasp, because then that was the start of their demise. And so it's
really a
difficult
future-proofing
situation.
thing.
But this is something that the RFU and it's a future-proofing thing. It's for fans, it's for fan engagement, for player safety, for everything like that. But equally, when you've got it, we've mentioned the Scarlets issue before. When they moved to a bigger stadium and then could hardly fill it, that same issue would happen. Is that they'd expand their stadium, but then they would only be 10% filling it. And what's the point in where's the atmosphere in that? So it's a very difficult decision for them, but they're refusing to back down, and they're just continuing to dominate the league.
Do you see any sort of like headway being made between the RFU and Ealing, or if it is Ealing which is probably the favourites to win the championship again this season?
I don't think they will. No, I think the plan will be to close the Premiership off and just have it as I think they'll invite 2 more teams up, which I'm guessing will be Worcester and another when the time comes. And then after that, it'll be a closed league.
Can they do that? Can they just
RFU
can they just like bring teams just like up, just even if they don't finish like in the top of the championship?
No, I don't think it will be that they'll just invite teams up. I think they'll say, okay, we're expanding the league to 2, and then the next 2 teams who are eligible to go up, you still have to meet the minimum the minimum standards. Whoever they are will join the Premiership, and then they'll close it off, I think, which will be really sad.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting to see, because if they were to do something like that, then you'd have potentially, say, Doncaster Knights, they finished second in the championship. If they were to change it to 2 teams, then obviously that would be Doncaster going up, and then under current status, it would be Ealing staying in the league, even if they finished above. Would that be correct? Yeah. Yeah, well, that's it's an interesting
I'm not
situation. Sorry, I feel like there's a bit of a delay here.
No, I can hear you ish, but it's just I was done with my point. It's all right.
Okay, right, that's all right. Well, we'll maybe finish off just on the R360 just thing about the rugby unions coming out against it. So yeah, that was our a wee bit of a lesson from our English Championship expert Dom Leach there, who's sort of, it's really great to hear that insight and sort of hear how that sort of operates at sort of, I guess, in the 2nd division of English Rugby. But that'll be very interesting to see how that transpires in the coming years if Ealing were to continue to sort of win the championship every single year. Hopefully they can get something sorted with the RFU. But this brings us on to our final topic of discussion, which is R360. So we had mentioned R360 number of, I believe, probably a month or so ago now. It's been something that's sort of been brewing behind the scenes for quite a while. A big story coming out from the Telegraph over a month ago, or potentially even 2 months ago, about sort of players signing up to this breakaway league that was going to go all across the world. And now we're having the rugby unions of England, New Zealand, Ireland, France, South Africa, Australia, Scotland and Italy, all sort of basically coming together with a joint statement and saying, effectively just coming out against R360 as a breakaway league, and encouraging men's and women's players to sort of have extreme caution when being approached by this league, and that they'd be ineligible for international selection. What do you make of this? Is very much a big news story in terms of the future of the game. But what do you make of this statement that's come out from the rugby unions, and does it surprise you?
I think it's great that they've all clubbed together and said, we're not having this, and if anybody wants to break away and go and join that league, you just won't play internationally. So people have got to think to themselves, well, is representing my country a bigger honour than getting a big paycheck at the end of the year, kind of thing. So I think it's good that they're blocking it already. it's interesting that Wales and Argentina both have gone against it. I mean, Wales, why would they go against it? No one would, in all honesty, would want to play for Wales
Well,
right now. So it kind of
I
makes
think they've
sense.
sort of
But
just it's maybe just the fact that they have been in a bit of a turmoil themselves and maybe just haven't come out and just said. And I think with with them potentially cutting down to 2 teams and then also Argentina, I think maybe the Jaguares are potentially coming back, but they don't really have a proper top level Argentinian team at the minute. So I think that's maybe why that they've sort of looked at that, because they're potentially not in the club position to, they're just in a bit of turmoil themselves, so they haven't joined that statement. But do you think this sort of foils the plans of R360, or do you think they'll continue to go for this? And could you potentially see it working?
I mean, when you've got 8 of the biggest rugby nations kind of going against this and saying, you're not allowed to play for your nation if you go and do this. That's the majority. That's all Prem clubs. That's all URC clubs. That's all everything Southern Hemisphere as well. So if you rule out everybody who is wanting to do that, then where's the attraction going to come from? If you've not got big players who are going to break away and go, actually, I don't want to play for my nation anymore, then I'm going to go play for this. If they don't get enough players doing that, then it's just going to be a failed plan. There's going to be nothing, because especially they've done it at an awful time. They're shooting themselves in the foot because it's 2 years away for the World Cup. So everybody's going to be wanting to play in the World Cup rather than playing for R360. And I guess it's not going to be a case of, well, I'm going to do R360 this time round and then I'm going to come back and play for the nation. I think it'll be no, you're either doing one or the other. So yeah, it's I'm just baffled still that Mike Tyndall is so, the forefront runner for this and just kind of wanting to push it so much. And, they say they're doing it to break away from the norm of, big consortiums kind of, and big wigs kind of owning the clubs. But that's exactly what they're going to do now, is that it's going to be big consortiums and big, big characters who are going to be owning these clubs. They're not going to have ownership of the players per se, but it's stupid, ridiculous. I'm so against it.
Yeah. Well, I think I would tend to agree with that assessment, really. I think it's just that it's rocking the boat for something that I don't think needs to be rocked. We'll see. We'll see how it transpires in the next couple of weeks. Potentially, we might have a statement coming out from R360 itself. You'd imagine you would. But yeah, that rounds us up on episode 14 of the Ruck and Roll Show, season 3. Thank you very much for watching. It's been a pleasure rounding up the Rugby Championship action and all the action leagues in England. And in the URC as well, and then that R360 story. But we'll be back next week to recap another what should be enthralling round of rugby in the English Prem and the URC, and potentially any other further developments in the world of rugby. But thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you then. Bye bye.